And as mentioned earlier, well, I have Kevin Osido who's joined me this morning just to review some of the stories and looking at also what's in the papers. Good morning, Kevin, and thank you for joining this morning. Kipchumba will be joining us in just a short while. And, well, on page 4 of The Nation, we have that story running, and that's to do with Amos Wako, the former Attorney General, basically querying Uhuru Raila deal. But more importantly, or looking at that particular story, is the fact that we seem to already be getting into high gear election mode with presidential hopefuls already being fronted. Your thoughts on whether we're already, you know, on an election mode?
Quite unfortunate, Mike, because we note that Kenyans have been treated into a lot of political activity in the last almost 2.5 years. And this is quite disturbing because given the kind of, well, one, controversial, very hard times that Kenyans have gone through, politically speaking, we should therefore be giving Kenyans an opportunity to build up from the crashes that we saw, which were associated with the last election. We're also talking about really the agenda of the Jubilee administration, the Big Four, and the president is very keen to be able to ensure that Kenyans have affordable healthcare, affordable housing, that manufacturing sector provides employment for our young people in the country, and that food security issues, agriculture is catapulted, and that people are able to put food into the table. So I want to agree with the AG Emeritus to the extent that people should be willing to listen to voices of wisdom. We should be able to also hold our horses, politically speaking, so that everybody is seen to be not only supporting the president, but also giving spaces and opportunities for Kenyans to be able to participate in active processes of development. Two, that investors are also interested in the political, in the investment environment of the country, and that we should not be really invoking emotions and participating in activities which would then, well, minimally really scare the investors who want to come and put their efforts and put their resources into this country. And finally, of course, 2022 is here. We can see a lot of activity from especially the executive. The deputy president is really doing a lot of work. Almost every week we are seeing people visiting his homestead. We are seeing a lot of activities in the countryside. Really, we should also have the president put his house in order. And then the same whip that is being cracked from the other sides, from people who might not really be primarily actively involved in the political, the setting up of the climate of the 2022 elections, also asking people like the deputy president to give development, give cohesion, integration, and more or less peace a chance, which really is associated with the handshake, which we just saw. So I think for me, I would agree with the,
the Senator for Busia.
Exactly.
Yeah. That, well, for him, he says there should be at least a reprieve of 2 years before we start looking at 2022. However, looking at it from the political plane and from the politician's point of view, I guess for them it's always looking for the next opportunity. And I mean, you don't start your campaigns, or rather, you don't start endearing yourself to the people just a year before you get to the elections. You start as soon as you can. That's
very true, but the same energy, the same vigor, the same zest that we are seeing the politicians, and especially people who are charged with the responsibility, the higher responsibility of making it better for Kenyans, is that amount of vigor and vitality. We should also be able to see it put at the same pace on the table with service delivery issues. You know, the war against corruption, you know, we're talking about youth employment opportunities. We should be seeing at least some agenda discussions that are taking place in those political rallies, so that then we say, when I become president, I want to ensure that 500,000 of our young people have jobs within this first year. But yes, we have seen those kind of things. So the people who advise government, the people who sit at the table where these decisions are being made, should be able to invest in research, so that then we see these 2 years more or less being an audit or a monitoring and an evaluation process of some of the processes that are therefore supposed to ensure that not only that services are not only delivered, but that we see government doing what it says it is going to be, because otherwise saying what it is going to do. Because otherwise what this means is that we're going to be spending too much time politicking, as opposed to investing the same amount of time making it easier for Kenyans to participate in active national and county development processes.
Absolutely, and I guess that the heart of every Kenyan really is just to live, really, just to have food on the table, and to ensure that if it is work, you're able to go to work and get home and put food on the table, pay school fees, or whatever it is that is important to that particular Kenyan. Now, moving on to other stories where Chief Justice David Maraga is refuting claims by Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i that a section of judges are colluding with the opposition and activist lawyers. Speaking in Nairobi after opening this year's annual East African Court of Justice Conference, the Chief Justice advised the government to appeal against any decision if it feels dissatisfied with it.
It was the annual East African Court of Justice Conference, the first event graced by Chief Justice David Maraga, since Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i claimed that a section of the judiciary had been held captive by the opposition. And here, Maraga sought to set the record right.
It is not true that any judges have been captured by the opposition, as it is being said. It is the orders they are issuing in the normal course of business, and they could make mistakes in those orders. They could make mistakes in those orders. And what we are saying is, if there are mistakes that have been made, let there be an appeal.
When on Tuesday he appeared before the National Assembly's Committee on Administration and National Security, Dr. Matiang'i took issue with some judicial officers whom he claimed were keen on embarrassing and stalling the government.
It is about a clique of judicial officers who have gotten into an unholy relationship with a clique of activist lawyers and oppositionist civil society people, with the intention of humiliating the government, stalling the government, embarrassing the government, and making it impossible for the government to perform.
We had quite a number of cases that came to court. We ruled in favor of the government. We ruled in favor of, against the government. We ruled in favor of the opposition. We ruled against the opposition. Quite a number of those matters came, and we dealt with them on the basis of the evidence that was there.
Although the Chief Justice refused to respond to claims that a single activist has been issued with over 30 court orders against the government, saying the matter was still live in court, he nonetheless observed that no judge chooses to handle any case except that matters are taken up by judges on duty.
Some of those matters go to a particular division. We have the Judicial Review Division, we have the Constitutional Division. That's where they are dealt with, and invariably you find they are being dealt with by the same judges.
Remarks by the Chief Justice follow those by Raila Odinga, who in his statement castigated Dr. Matiang'i for disrespecting the judiciary.
And I'm appealing to the young man to put on some brakes. We have been around for some time, and we have seen some of the serious then ministers who are close to the power or to power. They are no longer again close to power.
On his part, activist Okiom Tata has termed Matiang'i's conduct before Parliament as disrespectful.
It is really, really saddening that a man of Matiang'i's caliber, a man who at one time was teaching my books at the University of Nairobi, in particular the play Luanda Magere during his literature classes, should degenerate just because he has tested some power to a level whereby he thinks that he's a small god, some tin god to be worshipped.
Niliona anasomea wabunge. Hiyo kamati hata sijui ni kamati gani, wanakaa wanaangalia Matiang'i anawasomea. Huyo jamaa amemea pembe.
Even though the Chief Justice has sought to set the record right regarding the perception the government has about the judiciary, it remains to be seen if it will inspire confidence among politicians and government officers and indeed the public. Shadrach Miti, KTN News.
All right, and well, that is now what's happening in the corridors of justice. And we are also joined now by Oliver Kipchumba. Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. And well, let's start with you, Oliver. And this is, of course, Dr. Matiang'i under some fire with all and sundry, or rather, let me say, majority saying that his words were not very, kind words, especially as one of the senior leaders of this country in regards to the judiciary. Your thoughts on what's happening so far?
Thank you for having me, Mike. The independence of judiciary cannot be restated. The Constitution has dealt with it. We have had several several pronunciations to that effect, but we do not need them really. The Constitution at Article 160 is crystal clear in terms of what we expect from the judiciary. The judiciary willed power delegated from the people, states the Constitution. Therefore, I don't see the need of all the ulabaloo around discussing. We should not
but don't you think that
politicize
it's
court orders.
unfortunate the words that are used against the judiciary by a senior, government official like Dr. Matiang'i as a CS, especially of security?
I think the words like evil were not. They were not
called for.
They were not called for because these are professionals. There is a way of taking complaints to the JSC. We have a whole structure, and that is what we believe and we think any government official and top government official of Matiang'i's caliber should have done. I think also coming out and criticizing the judiciary, coming from the executive, means that there are a lot of things that we are not getting. The other thing which I need to state is that as a nation, we don't seem to understand the meaning of the judicial review division of the court. For example, Justice Odinga has been heading the judicial review division of the High Court here in Nairobi before he has been now transferred to Machakos. The work of judicial review is to censure government, literally, which means their decisions will always be in tandem with what the government did or against. And most of the time, the government is seen as the bigger person here. So anytime that is expected. The other point which we need to make is also judiciary is not and should not be seen that it cannot be criticized. What we cannot do is attacking the judiciary. Criticizing them, it is done daily.
Okay. Kevin, your thoughts on the frosty relationship between the judiciary and the executive, if Dr. Matiang'i is anything to go by, because they say that if you hear one of the children, from a certain home talking in a certain way, chances are they have heard this from their father.
And that could be true, because the quotation around "we shall revisit" is very clear in our minds as Kenyans.
And it's still vivid.
It is vividly seen. And just after the revisiting, we had a very interesting letter, if I could say, written by the Secretary General of the Jubilee. Mheshimiwa Raphael Tuju, CIS now. And what is happening, therefore, between the judiciary and the executive, in my view, would really be lessons to learn insofar as independence of institutions is concerned. We must be willing as Kenyans to be able to allow institutions to do their work and to be seen to be doing their work. And if I was a practicing lawyer, I would have probably joined, or rather requested the CJ to join the protesting lawyers in the protests against these interferences. I don't think that His Excellency the President is probably part and parcel of what we are seeing coming from Mheshimiwa Matiang'i, but indeed, as you rightfully said, the father needs to call his house in order. We shouldn't be seeing the former Prime Minister be the one asking Matiang'i, in fact, ordering Mheshimiwa Matiang'i to stop these frosty attacks on the judiciary. But this is a clear indicator of what probably we expect to see, even as we move forward with our national development. County level CIDP processes are ongoing right now, and people are expected to be participating in all these processes. But unfortunately, all these politicking, all these accusations from one arm of government to the other, in my view, is really interfering with a lot of positive development that is happening all over the country. Unfortunately, again, as Kenyans, we like spending time on frostiness. Right. So we don't want to talk about the good things that are happening between Mike and I. We want to talk about the differences that you and I really are going through, and that is what we do to be able to spend too much time talking about. Whereas, in fact, in my view, the judiciary, and I like what Oliver, my friend, is saying about roles and functions of arms of the judiciary. Can we see a lot of creation of awareness that is happening from the Judicial Service Commission going out there, like we have seen LSK going to the counties to be talking to Kenyans around what you need to know about the law? Because initially we know that Kenyans were really not very actively involved in a lot of, judicial processes until when we had the 2013 Supreme Court and words like amicus curiae began, coming up. We therefore saw the Supreme Court processes being beamed live on television. And so it therefore excited the interest of Kenyans, and it gave Kenyans an opportunity to want to participate and just get to know how does the law work, how do the courts function. And so I think that the judiciary should take advantage of this opportunity to come out there and engage with Kenyans. Tell them, when you see this happening, this is why it is happening, and this is what we are going to do. We are not seeing that happening. The only other point when we see Kenyans or judiciary engaging with Kenyans is when we have very big public interest litigation processes going on, for instance, on extrajudicial killings. So we are seeing lawyers on the streets marching against police killings of their colleagues like Willie, the late, among others. Whereas I believe and I am convinced that we therefore need to take advantage of such opportunities to inform the citizens, because it is only then that people will be able to understand when the judiciary is attacking the executive and vice versa. What is my role as a citizen? Because all these are public interest institutions. They're supposed to work in the interest of Kenyans, so that Kenyans are able to know how do I initiate a petition, and what is the function of a petition within a process or within a case. Because otherwise, Mike, I am afraid that we may lose opportunities that are meant to present lessons learned for us as a people, and that is why probably we might not be many times interested in seeing the ends of so many processes that are taking place, either whether positively or negatively.
All right, and Oliver, before we move away from Dr. Matiang'i, there's a story here on page 10 of the Standard. Deportation row hounds Matiang'i. And of course, Matiang'i in the last few weeks has been a man under fire, and this is to do, of course, with Miguna's return, or attempted return, if we can call it that. But just to compare the Dr. Matiang'i that we saw heading the education docket, doing extremely well, but a lot of criticism, and his style seeming to change now with him taking over the security docket. Your thoughts on whether it is possibly the nature of the docket that maybe has made him become very confrontational?
The docket of security, since time immemorial, has always attracted a level of controversy. It's because of the decisions that are being made from that area, and the sensitivity of the docket in itself. One, you have to realize that somebody to be there, first of all, it needs a tough person. And we have seen all his predecessors, from Mishuki, Kaiseri. You need to be tough, because you know that Kenyans are very bright people. And with that brightness comes a lot of dangers. And this is the ministry tasked with immigration, what we'll call the home security, and all these matters are now interior decisions of the government. I believe that at times we might be judging Dr. Matiang'i too much. What we need to give him is just to criticize the parts when he goes against the law, but allow him a latitude to carry on with his duties. But excesses in any way must be criticized. We should not be seen to be condoning any excesses. What we should be seen to be praising is the rule of law. Anything against the rule of law should be called out.
All right, and I guess the rule of law is one of the things that has brought him to the headlines severally, and this is because of disobeying court orders. Kevin, does that docket attract a certain amount of combativeness? One would imagine that the level the CS is operating at is not necessarily one that requires you to be combative. It's more of a strategy and policy.
I agree with you, Mike. In fact, in my view, the CS4, the ministry in charge of interior and national coordination of national government, is indeed the face of the cabinet, in my view, from a governance perspective and just levels of interest. Because like Oliver said, if you were to break down, other than the Ministry of Agriculture, which has almost 74 plus agencies and departments, the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government probably would rank between the first top 5, other than agriculture, education, and then interior. Why? Because therefore, it therefore presents lots of interests among the citizenry. I don't believe that the CS in charge of security or interior should be a tough person. And I want to plead and appeal with Mheshimiwa Dr. Matiang'i to demystify this narrative and this belief that for you to arise to the apex of this kind of ministry, you must be a tough person. We have seen...
And I guess you mean aggressive as opposed to... Because you can be tough, but temperate, you have temperance,
exactly,
and a level of sobriety.
Principled and Exactly, those kind of attributes. So that then, and probably he also needs to be advised that we have seen others come and go. We've seen this kind of involvement. So my appeal is probably to just open up the ministry, allow people to engage with you. Don't feel that when you're being criticized, then people do not like you. We have rated you. I mean, if we were to rate the first, the 2013 cabinet, Dr. Matiang'i would probably rank among the top three. Why? Because of his ability to deliver. Of course, we were here with you and others when we also spoke about the same Daktari on public stakeholder engagement issues, you know, so that then in the decisions that you make, let people be part and parcel of it. But I think he is doing what he needs to do as a CS. Unfortunately, we don't feel that he's a representative of so many people because of the manner in which some of his decisions and actions are being taken. But Daktari, temperate your activities, listen to the voices of the people. When lawyers say obey court orders, please kindly, it is the rule of law, obey court orders, engage with the people and open up the office. As a public servant, well, the bare minimum one would expect is obedience to the law and to ensure that you are protecting the Constitution. After all, that's why you are in a position of leadership. For now,